All right. Everything I have ever learned that amounted to anything was by following patterns. First noticing the pattern and then following and see where it leads. Each time you see a repeat in a pattern, you begin to see the bigger picture. It's funny how these charts work for me. Now that my mail got dumped and everybody had to resend their information, I'm doing it in the order it was resent because I don't know the original order. So I'm just taking it as it comes. And they've all fell into a certain date, which was 1981, which is very connected to right now. So I want to take you back here. Let's go to Virgo and talk about 1981, which is 8 and 1 is a reverse of the 18. But it was the last time we had a Saturn-Jupiter conjunction in an Earth sign. I want to bring you back to that conjunction. I want to bring you to the exact conjunction. And I'm going to put it at the 26th of July 1981. We had a Saturn-Jupiter conjunction in the Earth sign of Virgo. But the ironic thing about it is Pluto is also there. This is part of the generation with Pluto and Virgo. I've talked about this many times. Pluto is considered the subconscious mind. It works in symbolism. When we have the Saturn and Jupiter conjunction, the door to the Black Lodge opens. That is the subconscious mind. And Pluto happened to be there in 1981. And pretty much we did a good manifestation. These two meet every 20 years to set the stage for the next generation. And the way the cycle is set up for them, especially Saturn, they tend to take turns every 20 years. So Saturn took the power in 1981, but in 2000, Jupiter took power. And now it's cycling back to Saturn. So Saturn gains his generation every 20 years. And the last two times, well, the last time and the time coming, it's going to happen in the Earth signs. Mutable Earth, meaning transmute, transmutate. Pluto there. So what's going to manifest is from the subconscious mind. This is the same thing that's going to happen in 2020. The way Pluto's energy works, because he moves so slowly, we don't look at Pluto returns. Pluto affects us when it comes on the same cross or in the same element as your natal chart. Currently, we have Pluto on the mutable cross, just like it was in 81. It's with Saturn on the mutable cross right now and mutable fire of ideologies. It's there cleaning up old ideologies because we're going to get a new one. And then in 2020, on the winter solstice, about 2 years and 2 weeks, that's what we're looking about, 2 years and 2 weeks, these three will meet again in Capricorn. And a much tighter configuration, but it's the time of those born with Pluto and Virgo. It's the reason you were born. Pluto in Leo. Let's just back up. Pluto in Cancer was the generation of World War II. Pluto and Leo, we call them the baby boomers. These are post-war babies. This is the generation that started the fire, that wants to change ideologies in the next fire. So those of us born with Pluto and Leo, our time is now, because Pluto is in fire. So it's our time to take away what we were born for, to remove the ideology of the war mentality. But we're going to have a hard time doing it. We just start the fire. Who finishes the fire? Those born with Pluto in Virgo. This is the generation that, the best way that I can sum it up descriptively is, this is the generation that knocks the fucking door down. They're going to stand there and wait patiently on their turn. This generation is. And they get hijacked. And they keep knocking on that door and nobody's answering. So they're just going to kick it in. And that begins in 2020, which sets the stage for the next 20 years. And it's happening in the House of Government. It's happening in the House of Government, education, the military, what I call civil service jobs. Capricorns, they tend to be not the owners, but the managers. They run things. They're very orderly. But because it is the House of Government, it is Saturn's house. And the trifecta on this is the fact that Jupiter is debilitated here. So the church is debilitated, ideology is debilitated, mysticism is debilitated, religion is debilitated here. It's all about government, and we've talked about that word government, to govern the mind. Alright, with that, I want to talk about the Mercury retrogrades that we had this year in 2018. Our first, these are more patterns I want you to begin to see, so you can see how everything swaps places. Everybody gets a turn. There's a time for everything under the heavens. Early in the year, the first Mercury retrograde happened in Pisces, which is water. This is mutable water, and Mercury is debilitated here. So he went retrograde and debilitated. The next time he went retrograde in the water of Scorpio. So just like Saturn takes his turn from earth sign to earth sign, Mercury did the same from water to water. Now Venus, the other upper chakras, I'm talking about the three upper chakras, Mercury, Venus, and Saturn, because these are the ones that we really need to pay attention to. Venus went retrograde in its sign of debilitation, the earth sign of Virgo, Mercury's house. So Mercury is exalted here in Virgo while Venus was debilitated. Venus was exalted in Pisces while Mercury was debilitated. These patterns are getting tighter and tighter, closer and closer. These patterns don't always occur. This is a very auspicious time. This 1981 conjunction had a, what is the moon? Let me find out what the moon is here. 26% moon in Taurus. That's very special to the Freemasons. The sun in the house of the moon. This was a very similar conjunction, but different. It's the similarities are, it's Pluto there, it's in another earth sign, and it sets the stage for the next 20 years, and Saturn gets the upper hand here. Saturn had the upper hand here because it is an earth sign, even though Jupiter rules the mutable cross. Because Saturn is the head of all air and earth signs, to where Jupiter rules water and fire. So earth sign leaves Saturn in control. But Jupiter was not debilitated here. He almost balanced out the power because he does rule the mutable cross. Everything has to be weighed into account. But these two conjunctions, and here's the really ironic thing about it. One of the charts I did was a month ahead, and it was a Leo. Let me back it up here. It was a Leo with this. So we had a Saturn-Jupiter conjunction in an earth sign, and their sun sign was right where the eclipse happened last year. So we got a year, 2 years now till we get to the next conjunction, and then another 3.5 years to the next eclipse. This person wasn't born in the United States, but their chart was so connected to these eclipses that are occurring in the United States because of their sun sign in Leo in 1981 under a Saturn-Jupiter conjunction. So they're going to be affected from the date of the first eclipse through the second eclipse, which is a 7-year period, with the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction 3.5 years in between. The patterns are becoming so distinct. They're becoming so in your face. You can't deny what's going on. How this repeats and repeats, especially the Venus Mercury, where it's like doing a dance and you square dance and it's time to change partners, right? You swap partners right in the middle of the dance. It's kind of crazy, but I want you to see the patterns, and that's what you should do when you have your natal charts. You should, to carry your cross daily, is to pick it up and look what's going on every day and how it affects you, and then you'll start to see the patterns in your charts. It's very clear to me after studying and then becoming an astrologer why the stellar cult was so powerful in ancient times. Because when you start to recognize these patterns and you know, oh, that's a repeat of this but with this variation, and you know your histories, then it's easy to tell what's going to happen, what we can expect. Sometimes it can even be detailed, but I'm looking at the big picture, more of a world stage than an individual chart, and I'm seeing the patterns in the big picture and how, yes, history repeats itself, but the whole point of us learning is we should be able to change it. We have cognitive skills that the other species on the planet don't necessarily have. They have an innate instinct, inborn acts, inborn information to where they're more in tune with nature than what mankind is. But we have cognitive skills that they do not. And therefore we should be able to think our way out of this box. Especially if we see the signs and we know what's coming. We would know how to prepare for it. Not that we can overrule fates or destinies, but sometimes there's a way to ride that wave. You don't necessarily have to let it take you down. They call it hang 10, where you ride the wave. You go with that flow. And that's what the masters of this world, one of the abilities they have that we don't, is to ride that wave. Most of us, most of the world's population, I don't care if you do go to college, unless you have a liberal arts degree, which most people think is bullshit, you don't know anything, because that's why they're ahead of us, because the way they speak in code and iconography, symbolism, you learn all that in the liberal arts. And that's not, you don't get that in public schools. You don't get that kind of an education. Hell, they don't even teach phonics anymore. They're taking everything away that helps you to think for yourself and to be able to teach yourself. The greatest teacher you'll ever have is yourself, because it requires you to do your own homework. People who are good listeners make good students. Had I had a choice, I would have just been a student my whole life. I loved school. Even though I knew most of what I was learning was bullshit, I still enjoyed learning regardless. I was an avid reader up until I had a baby, and then I just moved to audiobooks on the little Walkman and the cassette. I used to have a massive library I wish I still had. because it was full of ancient Masonic books. Very rare books. I didn't collect just any books. I only collected books that you couldn't find anywhere. Otherwise, if they was in the library was my second home. I loved it. I loved reading, and I loved reading about stuff most people didn't. I was into word origin, origin of anything, archaeology, the past. I wanted to know about the past and to put the pieces together. And when you start to see the patterns of the past in Stellarium, then you can project that into the future. Somebody was asking me about the old Zodiac and the Greeks and before the flood. And if you notice all of the stories of the Greeks, you have Capella, Perseus, Medusa, Andromeda, Pegasus, Hercules. They're all above what you call the sun belt. The sun belt, where the planets, the sun and the moon travel, is the Zodiac, or the Zodiac. It used to be all animals. The Babylonians called it the garden, or the hanging gardens, right? Because they were all trees. You notice even today, depending on the state you're born in, that state, it has a bird, it has a tree, it has a flower, it has a plant, it has an animal associated with it. Every state has its own sigils, its own icons. But all of the stories of the Greek, Arcturus, they're all above what we call the sun belt. So there's a definite shift in the perspective of the sky from the earth through the sun that changed, as we are told, in the age of Cancer. So in the age of Gemini, the age of Mercury, which is Buddha, Hermes, Thoth, all of that. The opposite of this is Sagittarius, which is ruled by Jupiter. When you think of the Greeks, you think of Jupiter because of Zeus. It's all about Zeus. It's all about Jupiter. And just as when Moses brought out the flock, which is the Pleiades, the flock, when he brought the flock out of Egypt, Taurus, into Aries, Asia, they had to look upon the fiery bronzed serpent to be healed. So just as Gemini looks upon Sagittarius, don't do that. As Gemini looks upon Sagittarius, so Aries looks upon, Aries looks upon Libra, that fiery serpent on the pole. Taurus looks upon the scorpion, but it's really an eagle. This is the Roman eagle. That is why Rome, the eagle, and Taurus, the Egyptians, were one, but always at war, always opposed each other. Now, we're taught everything freaking wrong, and I mean everything, starting with which way is up, because we've been told up is north. That's what we've been told, but that's not true. All alchemy and Masonic iconography put east as up. East is always at the top, west at the bottom. You can look at any tracing board. It's everything. I don't want to say it's flipped, because it's not. It's off by 90 degrees. Or maybe even more accurately, I would say that elucid 23.5 degrees. But understanding the patterns, everything's connected to everything else. I consider the charts I do as learn. Every time I do a chart, I learn something new. Every time. Let's go back to today. This is today. This is now. How now, brown cow? Venus still in Virgo, debilitated. Bless our broken hearts. She comes out on the 13th. Thank goodness. The 12th is the last day. So we've got 5 days till we get our heart back. Mercury is actually still going through its shadow period. Even though it's over its retrograde response, it's still covering ground it's covered before. Which is really a reason I did this whole video, is about the Mercury retrograde, because it occurred to me something about retrogrades. A friend in Australia made me a crocheted throw, a blanket, a cotton blanket, so that I could keep warm. And it's really beautiful, and I crochet, so I know how it's done. And I was going to sleep, and I was thinking about crocheting and the different stitches that we have and how we make those stitches. Some are single stitches and they're real tight, or you can have triple stitches, but it's one long string. And when you're crocheting, if you make a mistake, all you got to do is pull the string and back it up to where the flaw is. You missed a stitch, or you added a stitch, and you just pull it out and you do it over. That's like a retrograde. It's pulling out those last few weeks and then doing them over. It's going back and correcting the flaw that's in the pattern. Does that make any sense to you people? Those of you who sew. Patterns are actually my pet peeve. I have a love-hate relationship with them, because I hate repetitive things. It drives me crazy, because I notice every little one. I don't think I could be a person that did exactly the same thing every day at exactly the same time. I would pull my hair out. I couldn't live that type of mechanical existence. Every day needs to be something new for me. I need to learn something new every day, or take a different bus route, or walk the other way, just something, so that it doesn't become monotonous, because to me everything has these patterns in it, and I don't want my life to be a rubber stamped pattern. I want there to be new, because even in these patterns we do see that there's a time and a place for everything under the heavens. In the description of all the scripts, I don't care if it's Hinduism, the Mandarin culture, the Quran, or the Western culture, from the ancient text, and when they talk about this new age that's coming, this new heaven and a new earth, we're going to get that new zodiac. And we're told things like there'll be no more sea. The sea is everything that's below the sun belt. So that's why we have the Leviathan down here. He's in the sea. This is the sea. It's referred to as across the pond. And when you talk about the winter solstice, which is here right now, so from the fall equinox to the winter solstice is considered the wilderness of Zen. This is the wilderness here. We call it autumn or fall. And these change. They've locked our clock. That's why I use sidereal astrology to know what time it is. Moon in Capricorn today, 23%. Mars still in Aquarius, getting ready to move into Pisces. I don't like Mars on the mutable cross. He comes off as bipolar. It's an unstable place. Mars rules fixed and cardinal signs. So for him to be in water, he's debilitated in cardinal water, but he can tend to be malefic on the mutable cross, either really loving and mousy or explosive. And the mutable cross, it's always like that. It's either a high or a low, no middle ground there. It's either kind of an all or nothing thing. So Mars can tend to be malefic when in this sign, so because he rules Aries. And to me, Pisces, the age of the church, you have the Old Testament church, that's the black and white fish over here, and the New Testament church, which is the red word fish over here. Now this fish, this Masonic black and white fish, is still worshiping Mars, the god of thou shalt not and fire. When the red words over here tell us we pray to our Father who art in heaven, which is Aquarius. Two different churches within one church. Actually, there are three, because Leviathan, I consider this basically what we would call today as Zionism. You have the Vatican that has the leash on Zionism, and it rules Freemasonry and then the New Testament church. Those red words that resonate with people. Love one another. That is the new law. It's the only damn law. Love one another. And it is for the flock. The flock, when it came out of here, went into Leviathan. I'm going to just keep showing y'all this until you get it. In the Egyptian. The stories in the Egyptian. We either get our stories from the Egyptian or the Arabic. It's reversed into the Greek and then given to us out of the Latin. But the flock is the Pleiades. They're brought out into the sheepfold, the head of Leviathan. These are the people in the pews. But in the time coming, we get the sheep here, which is, let me take us there. The bird, which is Aquarius and Capricorn. So it's very and we have the American Indian down here too. It's very likely that one of two things is occurring. That it's very possible that we didn't get as big a shift as we thought we did out of the flood. And that the zodiac itself, or the sun, from the perspective of the earth, is spiraling downwards. The stories were all up here. Now the stories are here, and it's setting us up for the stories to be here. The sun is moving down. And you'll notice they're giving us a lot of these now. Here's the sheepfold. We get Indus, or the Native American. Here's the peacock. We're starting to give all these symbols now. A different centaur who kills the lupus, the dog. We have the triangulum. This is the Holy Grail that's at the foot of the cross. And we're starting to get all of these stories here. And we call this the Ark. Dorado, El Dorado is the street of gold, right? They're looking for El Dorado, the city of gold. It's supposed to have streets of gold. The streets of gold is the zodiac. It's the path the sun takes. It makes a path across the sky, and it makes a path across the earth that we call the sun belt. So the zodiac itself is what's pre-imposed in the sky is superimposed on the earth. And then you have the serpent and the way it wraps itself around the earth. We've talked about that too. The way this power shifts from one age to the other. That here, Gemini, really the source of Gemini to me is India, and parts of Asia, India. You had Buddha, you had Vishnu, the Mahabharata, all of this was this age. Taurus, the age of Egypt and Rome. Aries, the Mesopotamian age. And then Pisces, the age of the church. But we're moving into an age that's been waited on and talked about in every culture, in every religion, in every teaching. It's been more of an oral tradition in most cases than what we would say written tradition. It's an oral teaching, knowing of remember when everything was perfect under the sun. And that time is returning. It's coming back. And it disempowers those that are in power. So they're really trying to stop it. But there's no stopping this. It does not matter at this point, even if one person is awake. It really doesn't matter. Because one day, when Aquarius comes fully into power, in the spring equinox, then everybody's third eye will open. And not only will those that are in power lose power, but they're going to have awakening of their own. We're told everybody wakes up. We are told everybody wakes up. Some wake up to everlasting life. Some wake up to condemnation. But everybody is going to wake up when the alarm goes off. There are many signs of the alarm. We are each given warnings in our life. Everybody has that happen to them when they die. When you die, you go through a life review, and either you're happy with what you did, or you are unhappy with what you did. It's self-condemnation. We judge ourselves based from the perspective of the higher self. We do nothing in secret. Nothing. Everything is remembered, which brings me back to Pegasus, because the stars in Pegasus are the stars in the Greek that talk about the memory. Remember the white horse, because the white horse has to do with memory. Our memories will be restored in full. Everybody's going to remember everything. So it doesn't matter how bad they fight or try to cover it up, hide it, because there's nothing hidden that will not be revealed. Nothing. Will we get to see this in our lifetime? Only the heavens know. I can look and tell you, but simple things like earthquakes and tsunamis can throw the earth off by 1 degree either way. That can speed us up or slow us down. But the energy that the sun is manifesting here, to me, the sun is not all the to-do that everybody gives it, because it is a tool itself. It's the portal in how we get here. But 2, it also channels the energies from the constellations that it's in. And there are wheels within wheels. When you start at the greatest outer wheel, right now the power source is right between Aquarius and Pisces. The battle is between water and sky, or flesh and spirit. The word from the Greek for Aquarius is pneumatic. We have pneumatic power tools. A power tool is run on air. That's air power. It's called pneumatic. So air power. But water power rules the age of Pisces. That's why the highest rank on the planet is the Admiral of the Navy. The Admiral of the Navy outranks every title on the planet. It is the admirable one by title. And then you have the Pope. He's supposed to be a water pope. He plays like he's the Pope of the heaven and the earth, but that belongs to Saturn. And Jupiter loves to put on Saturn's rings. When you see Jupiter eclipse Saturn, when we get to these eclipses, let's go there. When we get to the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction at the winter solstice, 12/21/2020, it appears Jupiter's in front of Saturn, so it appears that Jupiter is wearing Saturn's crown, but he can't get it all the way around his head, so it looks like wings. It looks like Jupiter has wings. Jupiter's Babylonian name, and it is still used today by a lot of Arabic cultures, is Nibiru. And indeed, Jupiter looks like he's wearing Saturn's crown. He's trying to usurp the throne. He's the imposter. Well, he ain't going to get away with it this time, because it's happening in Saturn's house, with Pluto there again. Now, the whole point of me doing all these videos for this many years is about this Saturn-Jupiter conjunction that's coming, because it's the most important one of my lifetime. I was born with this Pluto in fire of Leo, so it's my time now to stand up and talk about old ideologies and how they need to go, and open that door for those born with Pluto and Virgo. because you're the one that's going to take the action that'll actually get it done. Now the stage is simply being set. And this time around, it's all or nothing. In 1981, at the last time we had this meeting like this, we were all, well, I guess what you would call still asleep. We didn't know how the game was played. We weren't aware of what was going on behind the scenes. But in 2020, 2021, when it happened, in 2001, when we had the 9/11 event, you can see how they used trauma to manipulate the subconscious to set the stage for the next 20 years. And we all got threw under the bus and backed over a couple of times. Well, it's time to pick ourselves up this time, and instead we can each individually and collectively, for ourselves and for the world, not manifest the monsters of the id. Make an effort to clean up old ideologies, prejudices, dogmas, false interpretations. Be prepared for anything. Leave everything on the table. The possibilities are endless. And we need to make sure that the right possibilities stay possibilities. And the things that shut us down are fear, negative frequencies. That's the best way to describe it. Fear, hate, anger, revenge, vengeance, all of that. That has to go. I need you to even see that I consider hope, and our blind faith is not good enough. You got to make, I know I'm going to change this effort in my life. You need to go into this manifesting your daydreams, not your nightmares. Don't channel those negative energies. When they come up on you, you just say no. Turn around 90 degrees, 180 degrees, whatever it takes. Just make that turn, shift that energy, send it back where it came from. Don't let it bounce off of you, but don't let it attack you, control you, because what we do, especially on this day, but this whole year, the whole time that Saturn and Jupiter are in Capricorn together, is setting the stage for the next 20 years of your life and which direction this planet's going in. Because Uranus and Pluto have been wreaking havoc in the mutable cross. And it's the place of change and transmutation. But for this to go down on the cardinal cross, it's serious business. It's an all or nothing. And it's going to be set in stone, right? When you talk about cardinal cross, that's set in stone. Fixed is stone as well. It don't change. But cardinal is even a step above that. So you better make damn sure you know what you want, and you've let go of animosity, hatred, belief systems that are no longer serving you, yourself, or humanity. And that way, if enough of us embrace, we can do it for ourselves on an individual basis. But if we don't do it on a collective basis, those of us who've done it for ourselves will find a thinning of the herd, I call it. Kind of a lonely existence. There's already as few of us as there is. We don't need to lose any more. We need to gain more. And that should be the goal of what we're trying to work for come this next winter solstice. Now they have us set up with Christmas falling during this time, which can be used to benefit. The traditions are way out of season. Julius Caesar had the calendar changed because of that reason. Because what you're actually celebrating, this Santa Claus character, it no longer, that festival no longer actually occurs here. But the winter solstice, in every tradition, the sun dies for 3 days here. It stops moving in the sky. It almost like it wants to go retrograde. It's at its furthest point, and then it starts going back to the other end of the hemisphere. The reason this happens is simply the wobble in the earth. The sun itself is doing nothing, but from our perspective, the sun halts in the sky for 3 days on the winter solstice, and then it begins to move again back towards spring. So that is always been alluded to as 3 days of darkness. So you want to talk about those 3 days that the sun dies. That is just a metaphorical reference of 3 days of darkness, because it is the beginning again of a new year, a new birth. Anytime you hit the winter solstice, you've come out of the wilderness. So it's almost like crossing the Jordan, so to speak. You crossed the water here of Scorpio, going this way. And I've told you before, there's 4 stories going on. There's 2 stories of the sun and 2 stories of the moon, because they appear to move one way in the sky, but in the big picture, the story is told the other way. We go January, Capricorn, February into March, Pisces, but the story in the sky goes from Pisces, Aquarius to Capricorn. It's actually told in reverse. Alright, I think that's about what I wanted to cover. Y'all know what to do. Follow the patterns. Create your own patterns. Create patterns of kindness. And once you set a pattern like that you are doing a pattern of kindness, the universe picks it up and replicates it in this fractal. So that's a good way to establish things. They call it ritual, right? Ritual. It's doing something over and over again. So if we're going to do something over and over again, let it be kindness instead of our everyday mundane lives. Let's set a precedent for kindness by creating a pattern of kindness in your life.